To you, thank you for joining us on what is a very busy news day. I'm Kristen Welker in for Andrea. We begin with breaking news. Comedy legend Bill Cosby has been charged with aggravated indecent assault, a first-degree felony. The charges filed in Pennsylvania stem from a 2004 encounter. Montgomery County District Attorney-elect Kevin Steele says the comedian will be arraigned this afternoon.
Evidence shows Mr. Cosby established a relationship with the victim after meeting her through her work associated with Temple University's women's basketball program. Through the course of their association, the victim came to consider Mr. Cosby her mentor and her friend. On the evening in question, Mr. Cosby urged her to take pills that he provided to her and to drink wine, the effect of which rendered her unable to move, respond to his advances, and he committed aggravated indecent assault upon her.
Now, these charges come just before a January deadline for the 12-year statute of limitation for felony sex assault. The star of The Cosby Show has never before been charged with a crime, despite dozens of women accusing him of inappropriate sexual behavior. Cosby has denied these allegations. The alleged victim in this case, Andrea Constant, first accused Cosby after the incident. A previous DA declined to charge him in 2005, but prosecutors took a second look at the woman's allegations after new information came to light in July of 2015. Cosby's lawyer called the allegations, quote, ridiculous. Authorities did not identify the victim by name, but Constant was named in her previous lawsuit. Joining me now is MSNBC's Craig Melvin, WCAU's Rosemary Connors, who was at that news conference, and former Assistant U.S. Attorney Laura Coates. Rosemary, I want to start with you. You were in the news conference. Break it all down. What were the highlights?
Well, here's what I can tell you, Kristen. Bill Cosby is going to be arraigned here where I am right now at the district court here in Montgomery County on those charges of aggravated indecent assault. He's expected to arrive here sometime this afternoon around 4 o'clock. Again, we expect this arraignment to be face-to-face with the judge. As you mentioned, that statute of limitations was just about to run up, and that's why we're hearing about these criminal charges. This all stems from that 2004 incident at Cosby's home right here in Montgomery County. We're getting some more details in the affidavit, which they did release at that news conference not too long ago. This all stems from the incident brought on by Andrea Constant. She brought the civil case against Bill Cosby. She was an employee at Temple University at the time. She claims that she was drugged and assaulted, that she was in and out of consciousness. According to the affidavit, she says that she felt paralyzed. The affidavit also gives Bill Cosby's side to this story. He says that they were in a romantic relationship, that this was a consensual sexual encounter, and that he told investigators and police that he gave her nothing more than over-the-counter Benadryl. Again, Andrea Constant says that she rebuffed his advances toward her prior to this incident and has maintained that she did not consent to any encounter with him. Kristen?
Rosemary, great reporting. Craig, I want to shift over to you now. You have been tracking this story from the very beginning, really. I know that you spoke with the victim's attorney. What did the attorney tell you?
She said, first of all, Andrea Constant right now is a massage therapist. She's in Canada. We should not expect to hear from her. She moved there shortly after the incident in question. Here's a statement from the attorney, though. She said, on behalf of our client, Andrea Constant, we wish to express our appreciation to the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, the county detectives, the police department for the consideration and courtesy they have shown Andrea during this difficult time. We have the utmost confidence in Mr. Steele, the district attorney we just heard from a short time ago, and his team who have impressed us with their professionalism. In that this matter is now being pursued in the criminal justice system, we will not comment further. She also went on to tell me that they have been in constant, if you will, conversation over the past few weeks and months with the district attorney's office there, trying to provide as much support as possible. I can also tell you that we spoke to a prominent Pennsylvania legal expert a short time ago. One of the big questions that's been asked over the past hour and a half or so is whether we could hear from some of the other 40 or 50 or so accusers in this case. This Pennsylvania legal expert tells NBC News that it is possible for Cosby's these other accusers to testify if the case announced today in Montgomery County does, in fact, go to trial. This is Wesley Oliver. He's a criminal justice program director at Duquesne there in Pittsburgh. And he says that in the past, these other accusers, they could testify to prove what's called a modus operandi, a method of operation, if you will. So this means that while Cosby is charged with one count of aggravated indecent assault pertaining to this one alleged victim, other alleged victims could, in fact, testify that they were subject to the same behavior perpetrated by Cosby. Kristen.
Craig, thank you for that. Laura, pick up on that point that Craig raises, please. We know that we're anticipating to hear from Gloria Allred a little bit later on today. She is representing some of the other alleged victims. Could this lead to more charges? Do all of them sort of fail to meet the statute of limitations?
Well, in the cases, Craig is absolutely right. In the cases where there is the evidence of other prior bad acts by the other alleged victims, that testimony could come in a motions hearing or thereafter in trial if they can show that there is a pattern of behavior. But remember, just because you have been accused of previous crimes does not mean you've committed the exact crime you're being charged with. So a judge is always going to be very, very skeptical about allowing all the testimony to come in. But for the limited purpose of showing, look, the modus operandi, the MO this person has is we're drugging women, they're unconscious or unable to protect or defend themselves, and then a sexual penetration occurs. That's the key here and why it's the kind of testimony that probably will come in at trial. But before everyone starts salivating over this case, there are a lot of other legal hurdles, and that is just because his deposition reveals that he admitted to penetration of the victim doesn't mean necessarily it comes in at criminal trial.
And just explain that a little bit, because a lot of people might be confused by your final point, Laura. Explain that discrepancy there, how that plays out.
Certainly. Now, a defendant has the right to take the stand or not take the stand. If he chooses to not take the stand, his prior testimony in a civil matter, it would belie the senses to say that I can use your testimony against you in the criminal trial and avoid having you have to take the stand in my criminal trial now by using your deposition from before. If he takes the stand, it can be used to try to impeach him of having lied of some way, but it's not an automatic thing that it comes in. Now, it was used by the prosecutor most assuredly to be able to base his charges on, but it cannot be used just as a carte blanche to replace the requirement that the prosecution has to prove his guilt. He doesn't have to prove his innocence.
And Laura, what are you expecting to see today in court? Obviously, his arraignment, Mr. Cosby expected to appear, as Rosemary says.
He will, and he'll plead not guilty, and he'll set a motion schedule to decide the issue we were just talking about, which is we need to know whether there's going to be, it's called a Drew motion. Will there be a motion set to address whether the other umpteen victims and their testimony can come in to buttress this victim's allegation that he committed a sexual act against her? It'll be the very first thing they'll decide, and he will plead not guilty.
And I understand he could face as many as 10 years behind bars if convicted?
Absolutely, up to 10 years. Now, the maximum sentence may or may not be doled down if convicted, but certainly he is facing that. And this is a game changer, Kristen. It's the first time he's been charged. It will have a domino effect on the other cases. And I can bet that Gloria Allred, it will have an impact on the 29 victims that she represents in her case.
Craig, pick up there. Laura calls it a game changer. Talk about the enormity of this. Bill Cosby is a comic legend. He's also an icon in the African-American community.
Not just in the African-American community. I mean, he wasn't just a big deal to black people in this country. I mean, keep in mind, for all of the 80s and a good chunk of the 90s, I mean, Bill Cosby was one of the 2 or 3 biggest names in television. We all grew up watching The Cosby Show. It introduced a different type of black family to a lot of people in this country. And then after that, after The Cosby Show went off the air, his philanthropy continued. And periodically we would see and hear from Bill Cosby, who sort of made it a bit of a habit to criticize the behavior of specifically a young black man who dressed a certain way or talked a certain way in this country. There are probably, arguably one or two other legal cases in recent memory that conjure up the image of someone, a Michael Jackson or an O.J. Simpson in court standing before a judge professing their innocence. I mean, you're going to have Bill Cosby. My understanding is that they don't allow cameras in the courtroom here in Montgomery County, but you are going to have a 78-year-old TV icon, movie legend, philanthropist, actor standing before a judge and saying that he's not guilty of sexual assault. That's a really big deal, Kristen.
Craig, great perspective. Rosemary, I want to give the final point to you. You are from Philadelphia. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm your former colleague there at WCAU. Bill Cosby was a hometown hero for Pennsylvanians. What is the reaction there?
Kristen,
what does this mean for the people there?
Yeah. Kristen, as you well know, he was a popular celebrity here, very much so on Temple University's campus. He served on the Board of Trustees up until this time last year when he resigned. A very welcome face, welcome guest at the commencement every year. So especially for that community, the Temple community, this has been very difficult to process. A hometown hero, somebody who has contributed to Temple, to other foundations and organizations within Philadelphia. So no doubt people here in Philadelphia will be watching and waiting to see what happens in this criminal case.
Indeed. Great point. Rosemary Connors, Craig, and Laura, thank you so much for helping us understand this breaking news situation. We really appreciate it.